So we've just got to continue to be tough around the rim and not score through contact, right? We can't just rely on officiating.
The silence inside the crowded gymnasium felt almost sacred as 16-year-old Maya Rodriguez stood, her hand trembling, her courage hanging by a thread as she asked the question that had been suffocating her for months. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, yet it carried the weight of every young dreamer who had ever been bruised by envy, rejection, and the cruelty of words hurled from behind screens. "Miss Clark," she asked, her voice quivering, "how do you deal with all the people who hate you? How do you keep playing when it feels like half the world wants you to fail?" For a moment, the sound of the air conditioning and the faint creak of sneakers on the polished court were the only noises in the gym. 80 young athletes froze, their eyes shifting between the teenage girl and the world-renowned basketball player standing before her, realizing instinctively that what was about to unfold had nothing to do with drills or jump shots. It was about resilience, pain, and the courage to keep showing up when everything inside you wants to give up. Caitlin Clark stood still for several seconds, her eyes softening as they met Maya's. The girl's question pierced through the applause, the noise, the glamour, the layers of expectation, and went straight to the part of Caitlin that had known darkness too. It was the last afternoon of her summer basketball camp at the Des Moines Community Center, and the air was thick with the mingled sense of sweat, sports drinks, and adrenaline. For 3 days, Caitlin had pushed these young athletes to their limits, teaching them not just about discipline and teamwork, but about how to find grace in pressure. Yet here, in this instant, she sensed that the most important lesson of the camp was about to be taught not by her, but through her vulnerability. She walked slowly towards Maya, each step echoing on the gym floor. "Maya," she said gently, "thank you for asking that. What you're feeling, what you're fighting through, is something that every person here needs to understand. Because no matter how much talent or success you have, there will always be voices that try to convince you that you're not enough." Caitlin paused, her eyes scanning the rows of wide-eyed faces before returning to Maya's. "I'm going to tell you something I've never shared publicly before." A hush fell over the gym, and even the sound of the outside world seemed to fade. "When I was 17, just a year older than you, I was being recruited by nearly every major college program in the country. From the outside, my life looked perfect. But what nobody saw was that I was crying myself to sleep almost every night." She took a breath, her voice trembling slightly, the truth spilling out with the kind of raw honesty that silenced even the restless tapping of trainers against the bleachers. "The criticism was constant. People called me selfish, said I was overrated, said I only cared about attention. Every time I opened my phone, there were comments telling me I wasn't good enough, that I'd fail the moment I played someone better. I started believing some of it. I started thinking maybe they were right." Maya's eyes widened, disbelief mingling with relief. Her hero, the woman who seemed untouchable, had once felt exactly like her. Caitlin smiled softly, sensing that shared recognition. "There was a night," she continued, "when I almost quit. I sat in my room staring at my trainers, wondering if it was all worth it, if the game I loved so much was supposed to hurt like that. But then my mom came in, sat next to me, and said something I'll never forget. She told me, 'The people who criticize you the most are the ones who see your light the clearest. They attack what they can't understand, and they try to dim what reminds them of their own fears.'" The gym was utterly still. Even the younger campers, who barely knew what social media hatred felt like, could sense the magnitude of that moment. "That night," Caitlin said, "I realized something that changed everything. Hate isn't the opposite of success. It's a strange kind of confirmation that you're doing something that matters. The louder the noise gets, the more important your work probably is. You can't let people who don't know your heart decide your worth." She walked closer to Maya now, standing only a few feet away. "When people try to tear you down, it's not because you're weak. It's because your strength reminds them of something they've lost. So when they criticize you, don't let it make you smaller. Let it be proof that you're doing something worth noticing." Maya swallowed hard, her tears glistening, her folded paper shaking in her hand. "But it hurts," she whispered. Caitlin nodded, her own eyes misting. "Yes," she said softly. It does, and that's okay. Pain is the tax we pay for doing something brave. It means you care deeply. It means you're alive in what you do. Every great athlete, every artist, every person who has ever tried to change something has felt that same ache. The key isn't to pretend it doesn't hurt. It's to play through it, to turn that pain into purpose. She gestured towards the hoop behind her. When I get criticized now, I don't use it as a reason to stop. I use it as fuel. Every insult, every hateful post becomes another reason to show up, another reason to keep shining. Because here's the truth. The ones who criticize you are watching you more closely than anyone else. They're your audience, even if they don't want to be. A soft murmur of understanding swept through the gym. Caitlin turned slightly so that her voice carried to everyone. All of you here will face moments when people try to define you by their limitations. But remember this. No one who's doing more than you will ever try to pull you down. Only those doing less will. Real champions, on and off the court, don't compete through comparison. They compete through consistency. She smiled faintly, her eyes returning to Maya. And Maya, you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. The way you love the game, the way you show up despite the noise, that's your proof. You're already stronger than you know. There was silence again, but it was no longer heavy. It was full, charged with emotion, the kind that changes people. Caitlin placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, and for a brief second, the room seemed to exhale. I want you to promise me something, she said, that the next time someone says you're not good enough, you'll remember that even your heroes were told the same thing, and they kept going. Maya nodded, her tears now replaced by a quiet smile, the kind that carries both gratitude and newfound strength. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the gym walls, but it wasn't just for Caitlin. It was for Maya, for every young athlete who had ever doubted themselves and would now, perhaps, stand a little taller. As the camp ended, Caitlin lingered for a moment, watching the girls gather their bags and chatter excitedly. She felt something shift in her, the reminder that vulnerability, not perfection, is what truly connects us. Outside, the evening sun cast golden light over the basketball court, the air shimmering with warmth and hope. Somewhere in the crowd, Maya laughed, freely, fully, unafraid. And Caitlin knew that this was what legacy really meant. Not trophies or records, but the courage to turn your scars into someone else's map out of darkness. For in the end, it isn't the absence of hate that defines greatness.
Do you feel like she's finally found a rhythm, and what do you have to say about her performance tonight?
Yeah, again, she's just been a spark off the bench.
The gymnasium remained silent as Caitlin Clark's voice softened, recounting the night she had nearly given up basketball, sitting in her bedroom surrounded by cruel words on a glowing phone screen, believing for a fleeting moment that perhaps her critics were right, that maybe she wasn't good enough, that maybe she should walk away from everything she'd worked for. The memory hung heavy in the air, her vulnerability wrapping around every young listener like a quiet truth they had all felt but never dared to speak. And then, Caitlin said, her voice trembling before strengthening again, something happened that changed everything. Her younger brother, Colin, only 14 then, had walked into her room and found her crying. He didn't offer empty comfort or cliches. Instead, he looked at her with the calm certainty only innocence can hold and said, Caitlin, the people trying to tear you down aren't your enemies. They're your proof. They're proof that you're doing something so extraordinary, so threatening to their own mediocrity, that they can't stand it. But they can only succeed if you let them. His words, simple yet profound, became a lifeline that pulled her back from the edge. From that night on, Caitlin decided to treat every hateful comment and every harsh criticism as fuel, a sign that her work was powerful enough to stir emotions, to challenge complacency, to inspire envy even. She understood, slowly but deeply, that the louder the noise against you, the clearer the confirmation that you are being seen. As she shared this, the young athletes before her began to shift in their seats, something awakening within them. Maya Rodriguez, who had asked a brave question about dealing with hate, felt her chest lighten, her breath coming easier, the tight coil of shame and doubt that had held her for months beginning to unravel. Caitlin continued walking, closer to Maya, her eyes soft but fierce with conviction. "Maya," she said, "those people trying to make you feel small, they're not your critics, they're your biggest fans. Because think about it, when was the last time you spent hours thinking about someone you truly didn't care about? We only focus on people who have something we wish we had. So, if they're watching you, talking about you, even hating you, it's because you've already done something that demands their attention." The room rippled with murmurs of understanding as Caitlin's words cut through years of internalized pain and insecurity in the hearts of those listening. Maya lifted her head, her shoulders straightening as if the weight of invisible expectations had been replaced by a sense of purpose. Caitlin smiled gently, then added, "But here's the catch. You can't let their obsession with you turn into your obsession with them. You can't live to prove them wrong. The moment you start playing for your haters instead of for your dreams, they've already won. Your only job is to be so brilliant, so committed, that their noise fades into the background of your success." The young athletes watched as Caitlin's presence filled the space. Not as a superstar above them, but as one of them, a woman who had once been broken, who had rebuilt herself through fire and persistence. "Don't try to silence your critics," she said, her voice now firm and sure. "Outshine them. Let your results speak louder than their bitterness. Let your success become so undeniable that their words lose all power." The standing ovation that followed was instinctive and thunderous, but the most meaningful applause came in the quiet moment when Maya walked down from the bleachers, tears in her eyes, and wrapped her arms around Caitlin in silent gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me that their hate means I'm doing something right, for teaching me that their obsession is proof of my power." Caitlin hugged her back, whispering. Months later, Maya would carry that moment like a secret shield. When she signed a full basketball scholarship with Stanford University, her announcement post contained only one line beneath her photo. "Thank you to everyone who believed in me, and thank you to everyone who didn't. You all played a part